Welcome again to our podcast. Today we will be discussing a very interesting topic, from tax secrecy to tax transparency, how international cooperation has changed global tax administration. I'm your host, Franklin, and today, as our special guest, is Daniela Psaila, Director, International Tax Cooperation from the Malta Tax and Customs Administration. Thank you, Daniela, for joining us today on our episode.
Thank you for inviting me, Frank.
Our pleasure. So, Daniela, we're going to jump right into the first question. As we said, the topic is going to be international tax cooperation, and we want to explore how has this evolved significantly over the past 2 decades, and what have been the most important changes, in your opinion?
Yes, I think over the last 20 years, international tax cooperation has seen quite a remarkable transformation. Of course, one of the main, drivers for this was the global financial crisis, which accelerated demands for greater transparency, and as a result of such, international tax standards were becoming more robust to cater for such. Today, information can be exchanged routinely and systematically between jurisdictions. What was once pure exchange of information on request, so one jurisdiction requesting information from another jurisdiction in respect of, say, a particular taxpayer, now has evolved into a global framework which is centered on transparency and automatic exchange of information. So, indeed, automatic exchange of information has become central in international tax cooperation, and it is now one of the most widely used methods of exchange.
And if I may ask further, in terms of automatic exchange, naturally what we're looking at is that you have taxpayers reporting, and usually it will be, for example, in the context of common reporting standard, there are certain obliged entities, financial institutions, banks, and other institutions which are obliged to report through a platform to the Maltese tax authorities. And then the Maltese tax authorities would need to automatically exchange that information. Am I right in this, or is there more to it in terms of automatic exchange?
There is more to it because it doesn't solely depend on obliged entities providing information to the tax administration. So the basis of automatic exchange of information is exchanging predefined categories of income and capital at specific intervals of time. Okay. So it can mean either information which the tax administration already has in its possession, which this already happens within respect of certain categories of income, such as pension, income from a movable property. But then, yes, there are specific categories of automatic exchange of information which deal with reporting by local obliged entities or obliged individual taxpayers who report to the Maltese Tax Administration, and then the Maltese Tax Administration effectively exchanges this information with the relevant jurisdictions where the persons concerned are resident.
And I think what you see as administrators, tax administrators, you see quite a magnitude of data being shared in terms of tax reporting. How do you sort of cope with that in the sense, and how do countries cope with that? Because so much information is being tax shared.
Yes. So one of, let's say, you have to see both sides of the coin. Yes. So as automatic exchange of information has advanced and progressed, that led to more categories being exchanged and in quite a short period of time. So the Common Reporting Standard started around about 2014. We're now 12 years down the line. And for instance, the Directive on Administrative Cooperation within the EU has changed 8-9 times.
Exactly. We're
incorporating
on DAC 8 now.
Now DAC 8 has been transposed. Now DAC 9 involving exchange on crypto asset user information. So it has evolved, but this has led, yes, to vast amounts of information which is being exchanged. And one of the downfalls is if this information is received and nothing is done with that information, then that just results in an administrative burden, not only for the tax administration, but also for the obliged entities and the taxpayers who need to report, because this, all forms of automatic exchange of information consist of annual reporting. So that means annual reporting obligations on entities, on taxpayer individuals, and the tax authority at the end of the day. So if this information is not used, then it's useless.
It defeats the purpose, and everything is redundant.
The purpose, because the main scope of exchange of information fundamentally is not just providing information to other jurisdictions, but the information received should lead to voluntary compliance. How?
Exactly.
Because, in the past, most taxpayers used to, let's say, for want of a better word, hide income or assets.
Or disguise. Yes,
in other jurisdictions.
Yes.
The local tax administration doesn't know. And obviously then this would lead to an incorrect chargeability of income at the end of the day. But we must understand that tax is not only revenue for the government, but it is used for the well-being of citizens at the end of the day. So our tax system at the end of the day is there to improve the country's infrastructure and to generally, make our lives better. Although it doesn't seem like that when we have to pay tax at the end of every month.
Yes, that's true.
So yes, now we are focusing more on how that data and information is going to be used effectively, ultimately.
And let me backtrack a little bit with the next question, we understood tax reporting needs to be done because ultimately there's legislation and the enforceability of that. But why are we enforcing automatic exchange of information? And what is the benefit of tax exchange of information?
Yes, I think, and this also goes with what were the main developments tied into the first question. One of the biggest developments has been the move from reactive cooperation to more proactive transparency. So automatic exchange of information helps with being more proactive. Why? Because this information is exchanged periodically. The tax administration has this information at hand. For example, in relation to exchange on automatic exchange of tax rulings, whereas before a member state or a jurisdiction could grant a tax ruling to a particular company, possibly also an M&E, which has operations in various countries. Worldwide, global. And the tax administration, the domestic tax administration would not be privy to the details of that tax ruling, which could affect the tax base of that company.
This in fact what happened with
landmark cases, Amazon, Starbucks.
Yes, I think that was the
catalyst, a trigger.
The trigger for this exchange of tax ruling.
Exactly.
Which ultimately, as you were saying, it boils down to, we collect taxes at the end of the day for the well-being of a whole population, a whole country, It's not just revenue.
Our tax system depends on trust.
Exactly.
So citizens want, at least, to feel that everyone is paying their fair share of tax, regardless of where their activities are taking place and regardless of their size. So, this, I think, was one of the main drivers for the shift to more automatic exchange of information. The fact that large companies, multinationals, have a significant advantage over domestic entities which cannot shift their tax base. It's predominantly domestic, whereas if you're an M&E, you have the power to do so.
Exactly.
So this led to, let's say, making automatic exchange more of a critical part of international cooperation, because then tax administrations have this information at hand, let's say, in a timely manner. And they can react proactively rather than, have to wait for, say, if there was a particular tax ruling, then, this tax ruling and its effects to be used. And then 5 years, 10 years down the line, they audit this company and realize,
So it sort of creates an equal level playing field
Exactly.
for all stakeholders. On to the next question, and I think this is a very interesting question. How do you achieve balance between transparency, confidentiality, and data protection?
Okay, so transparency is like the buzzword
Yes.
in international tax cooperation, but then it does go hand in hand with strong safeguards for confidentiality and data protection. And confidentiality indeed is a fundamental principle of international tax cooperation. Jurisdictions are assessed on this, and indeed there are some instances where if there is an issue with the confidentiality level of a particular jurisdiction when it comes to exchange of information, then international standards and the directive also sometimes preclude that jurisdiction from participating in the exchange process.
Okay.
In order, obviously, to safeguard the rights
Exactly.
of the taxpayers. And of course, data protection now has become even more with the
VTLA, with the GDPR,
with the
yes.
GDPR, it has become, let's say, more of a delicate issue. So when it comes to exchange of information is exchanged within established legal frameworks, and it cannot be used other than for the purpose that it is intended. And that is how sort of we maintain the integrity of the information that is being exchanged.
It's a core principle of the GDPR, actually.
Yes, and it's not only important, so having high standards of confidentiality and data protection is not only important to safeguard the rights of the taxpayers, it is, but not only that, but it is also important to ensure that there is trust when in other jurisdictions, in their systems, when they come to exchange the data that they have, and when we send data as well. And this ensures the continued success of exchange of information. So although they seem to be at opposing ends, both transparency and confidentiality should not be seen as conflicting, but rather important elements for the successful exchange of information in an international context.
I think it also prevents several other criminal offenses, really and truly. So, as you know, tax evasion is a criminal offense.
Yes.
And I think the exchange of tax information curbs and reduces the risk of tax evasion, but also like in the terms of confidentiality and data protection, if information is leaked,
yes,
there might be what we know in the anti-money laundering sphere as tipping off, and the particular taxpayer might actually try and counter, because information is leaked, and try to hide further income or capital or whatever, and I think so. I think another advantage of data protection is that as well, to curb any other criminal offenses, not just tax evasion, but also anti-money laundering, because I think they go hand in hand.
No,
really,
they definitely go hand in hand, Franklin. And I think as the years have progressed, we've seen also not just globally, but also domestically, that there is increased inter-authority cooperation in this aspect.
Yes.
I mean, prior to, say, the past 5-6 years, we were all working in silos. Anti-money laundering was seen, something which is the remit of a particular supervisory authority, and that's it. But now we see that most of these areas are becoming more interrelated. So yes, tax evasion is a criminal offense. We do work hand in hand also with the FIAU. And this is not only domestically, but it is also mandated by international standards and the directive itself. So we do also exchange information to a certain extent, and always within the remit of the law, because then that is what preserves confidentiality and data at the end of the day. But we do see that we are increasingly working together to exchange information also domestically when we see that this is for the interest of the respective authorities.
Thank you, Daniela. I think now we're going to move on to the very last question. And the last question is typically, traditionally, always the future. What does the future hold? And what is Malta's perspective as to the exchange of information?
So, I mean, digitalization is changing the way that economic activity is, taking place. And therefore, this inevitably is changing the way how tax administrations work. As you mentioned previously, tax administrations receive vast amounts of information under, automatic exchange of information standards, and even exchange of information in general. So unless this is used effectively, as we said, this will only result in a burden, not only on the tax administration, but also on the taxpayers and obliged entities who have to gather this information and report it to the tax administration. So I think one of the main shifts which are happening is not only in collecting the information and exchanging it, but also making effective use of this information once it is received. And, here data analytics plays an important, role in this area. And we're seeing that there is more focus on analyzing this information also for risk assessment purposes and determining the risk level of certain taxpayers. So yes, I think one of the major shifts is going from simply exchanging to actually using the information that is received ultimately for the efficient operation of the tax administration.
And another buzzword, is AI part of the future?
Yes, definitely.
Definitely.
Even from Malta's perspective, I think one of the main areas that we are doing is that we are investing more in advanced analytics, not only for risk assessment purposes, but also ultimately to ensure that the data that is being received then effectively leads to correct chargeability of income of taxpayers, and hopefully in the coming years, voluntary compliance, because the taxpayer knows that the tax administration has all the information that it can possibly have on an individual, on an entity, and therefore this will instigate the taxpayer to say, okay, I will be compliant, because ultimately then there are obviously penalties which are related to non-compliance.
Exactly.
So even from Malta's perspective, yes, I think one of the, let's say, focus is on investing further in advanced analytics and expertise related to using of such, and also to increasing the quality and use of the information which is being exchanged.
In fact, even in the conference I've attended on the International Fiscal Association, regional and global, AI is very much being used by other tax authorities, and it's giving significant assistance and help to tax authorities for tax collection and tax exchange as well. Because ultimately, as well, tax exchange is part and parcel of tax collection, I believe. Any final thoughts before we wrap up this episode?
Yes, I think exchange of information has evolved from a very niche area in tax administration into a central pillar of global tax governance. But even though, the tools have advanced and frameworks continue to evolve, I think the objective remains the same, that we foster trust and fairness, and this would then increase credibility in our tax systems ultimately, which are the cornerstone of our society. Having worked in this area for many years, I think one of the most striking developments has been witnessing how far international cooperation has progressed, as we said, from something which was exceptional, sending a request on a particular person to another jurisdiction. Now it has become routine, systematic, but quite integral to the effectiveness of how then the tax administration operates when it receives this information. And it also essentially demonstrates what jurisdictions can achieve when they cooperate and work together towards a common goal.
Thank you very much, Daniela. Really appreciate you coming here and sharing your knowledge with us. So thank you once again.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure being here.